Welcome to Reformed Thinking. This is where we take the sources you provide, dissect the ideas, and distill the actionable insight that makes you the most informed person in the room.
And today we are doing a highly specific, custom deep dive. Our material comes from Colin Marshall's work on growth groups, and we're really focusing in on one vital chapter, the games people play.
Right. And our mission today is, well, it's pretty straightforward. We want to equip you, whether you're a group leader or just a curious group member, with a clear framework for understanding all these behavioral rules. We're trying to move beyond that feeling of, why is that person like that, to something more useful, like, okay, what pattern are they showing, and what is the specific proven strategy to manage it?
Exactly. So you'll walk away with highly practical, actionable strategies for handling small group dynamics. And this applies to any setting, really.
Any setting, a Bible study, a discipleship meeting, even a critical planning session at work, maybe.
It's group stewardship, but applied directly to the personality conflicts that so often derail the mission. It's taking the human side of leadership and making it, well, manageable.
Okay, let's unpack this then. The setup here is fascinating because the source suggests that even when people think they are just being themselves, they're often playing what he calls a highly sophisticated game.
And that word game can sound a bit, negative.
It can, but it's not meant to be malicious. It's just a consistent pattern of how they conduct relationships, a pattern that's been developed and reinforced over many, many years.
And that one idea, that simple reframing, changes everything. It shifts the whole discussion from, personality assessment to pattern recognition.
Right.
Because when we recognize behavior as a pattern, we stop treating every disruptive event as a one-off frustration. We start seeing it as a predictable, manageable input into the group's ecosystem.
I think that concept of the sophisticated game is really the key to unlocking all of this. We tend to think conversation is just spontaneous, but Marshall's central idea is that group members unconsciously adopt these distinct roles.
And those roles shape, for better or for worse, how the entire group functions.
And the word unconsciously is doing a lot of work there.
Oh, it's critical.
Yeah.
The individual isn't sitting there, plotting to interrupt the conversation or derail the whole thing.
No.
They are defaulting to a relationship pattern that, in other settings, in their past, likely brought them some kind of success, or at least attention or comfort.
Sure. Like maybe dominating the conversation in their family was the only way they ever got heard.
Exactly. And so they bring that pattern, that game, right into the small group setting without even thinking about it.
And the moment a leader sees it as a game or a pattern, it becomes tactical.
Yeah.
It moves the problem out of that emotional space of, this person just rubs me the wrong way. And it puts it into a more objective box, like, okay, this is the Monopolizer pattern, and I have 5 tools I can use to address it.
It gives the leader emotional distance. And that's essential for being fair and, wise in how you handle things.
That distance allows for effective management, right? Because if we admit this is a fixed pattern from years of development, the leader knows that coming down hard on them immediately is probably not going to work.
It's often counterproductive.
Right.
What's needed is wisdom, strategic intervention, and a sort of long-term view that guides that person toward healthier ways of participating.
Because the whole purpose here is spiritual growth and mutual edification. Managing these games just lets the group actually focus on its real purpose.
Right. And because the source is grounded in this context of Christian fellowship, discipleship, Bible study, the leader's responsibility has a specific weight to it.
It's not just about having an efficient meeting, even though that's part of it.
No, it's about stewarding the group's time and focus so that the Word of God is at the center, and so that every single member feels safe enough to be vulnerable, to be heard, and to actually grow.
And if the whole group is being held hostage by one person's disruptive pattern, the gospel purpose of that meeting suffers. It just does. So identifying the role is the first step in getting rid of that obstacle.
It's the difference between just reacting to noise and proactively shaping an environment where, genuine theological and relational growth can actually happen.
Okay, so let's pivot to the positive side for a minute, the constructive roles. These are the assets, the behaviors that the source says leaders need to recognize, encourage, and actively reinforce.
Precisely. This part is all about cultivating the good soil. When a leader spots one of these constructive behaviors, they shouldn't just let it pass without saying something.
Right, you have to affirm it. So the first one on the list is the peacemaker.
The relational regulators.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. They resolve disputes, they calm tension when things get a little heated. You can picture it, right? A doctrinal discussion where two people are moving from conviction into just being defensive.
Mm.
You see it all the time. And the peacemaker steps in. They use language that acknowledges both sides and just gently lowers the emotional temperature. They bring stability, and that allows the debate to keep going productively instead of just spiraling into a fight.
Absolutely essential. And just as essential is the focuser.
Oh, yeah.
Discussions are messy. They wander off into tangents because human thought just isn't linear. The focuser is the one who keeps the group aligned with the topic or the task at hand.
So if the group's been trying to break down a specific verse for, say, 30 minutes, and then someone throws in a story about their cousin's vacation,
The focuser gently brings them back. That's interesting, but circling back to verse 14, they protect the integrity of the agenda and really the group's precious time.
then we have the encourager. I think of this person as the affirmation engine of the group. They're constantly providing positive feedback, relational warmth. When someone offers a comment that's maybe a little tentative or vulnerable, the encourager is the one who validates it instantly.
Just a simple, that's a fantastic point, or thank you for sharing that.
Exactly. Those simple phrases make the environment feel safer for everyone else to speak up. They build confidence, especially for people who might struggle with public speaking.
And related to that, but a little different, is the sympathizer.
How is it different?
Well, if the encourager affirms the input someone gives, the sympathizer affirms the person's emotional experience. Their whole goal is to draw out people's feelings and make sure there's relational safety.
So if someone shares a personal struggle that's related to the topic, the sympathizer makes sure the group responds with appropriate pastoral care.
Right. They stop the group from becoming purely clinical or, just intellectual. They make sure the group stays a place of genuine connection.
Moving to more action-oriented roles, we have the initiator, the icebreaker.
So important.
When a difficult question is asked or a new activity needs to kick off, the initiator is the one with the courage to go first. They get the discussion started.
They offer that first perspective that everyone else can then agree with or disagree with or build on.
They take the social risk out of that first move, which is a huge service to the group. It gets the ball rolling.
And once that ball is rolling
Yeah.
and the input is flowing, you need the summarizer.
Yes. After, 10 minutes of scattered ideas, the summarizer steps in.
They draw the whole argument together. They articulate where there's consensus or maybe where the major points of disagreement are. They provide clarity on where the group actually stands.
And that stops the group from just unintentionally recycling old points or thinking they've solved an issue when they really haven't.
It consolidates the learning.
Yeah.
And that's vital for any kind of spiritual growth.
For the necessary relational release, there's the humorist. Humor, when it's well-timed and appropriate, is such a gift. It relieves tension, it sets a positive tone, it can diffuse an awkward silence or interrupt a moment that's getting a little negative.
And the key, as we'll see later when we talk about the disruptive clown role, is that this humor serves the group's health. It makes the hard work of discipleship feel enjoyable and, sustainable.
Okay, the next one is critical, I think, especially for the kinds of groups we're talking about, Reformed study groups. It's the devil's advocate.
A valuable role, as the source says. Their purpose is to sharpen people's thinking.
Right, they're not just trying to be difficult, they're the ones asking the uncomfortable questions. But what about that other verse? Or have we really thought through the logical conclusion of that statement?
They compel intellectual rigor. They prevent that superficial agreement or that comfortable groupthink from setting in. They demand justification, but for the sake of truth.
And finally, rounding out the positive roles, we have the socializer.
The relational glue.
Exactly. The spiritual work of the group is supported by its relational scaffolding. The socializer is the one organizing the informal life of the group.
The coffee, the meals, the hangouts after the study.
All of that. They foster the relational cohesion that's necessary for true belonging. And that informal glue they provide often determines the group's longevity and fidelity way more than, any curriculum choice.
So a wise leader sees these 9 roles not as just incidental personalities, but as necessary gears in a machine. Reinforcing them means you are actively cultivating a sustainable, focused, and healthy environment.
Okay, that's the good news.
Now we have to shift our analysis to the roles that cause group malfunction, the ones that demand strategic management from the leader.
And we're starting with the 2 extremes of participation. The person who never talks and the person who never stops.
Right. The silent non-contributor and the incessant talker. Let's start with the first one, the onlooker, or the non-contributor.
This is the member with minimal or, zero input, the silent observer. And while you can manage one or two in a group that's full of onlookers will never get anywhere.
The first job for the leader is to figure out the cause. The source gives two major potential reasons. The onlooker might just have a naturally quiet disposition, maybe they're shy or anxious, or, and this is key, they might be the product of other aggressive members in the group. If they're silent because the monopolizer or the fighter is taking up all the oxygen in the room,
Then the problem isn't really them.
exactly. The leader has to focus their management efforts on the aggressive person first. But if the cause is just their disposition or insecurity, then the strategies are much more gentle and focused on building their confidence.
Okay, let's run through these specific strategies for engagement. This is where the practical leadership stuff really comes in. The first strategy is to direct clear, simple questions to them.
But there's a big caveat there.
Right, you have to assess their perceived security level. If they are visibly anxious, forcing them to answer a big public question will only increase their trauma and make them retreat even more in the future.
The questions have to be easy. Something requiring a factual or a minimal opinion answer, not, a sprawling theological dissertation on the spot.
The second strategy is about intense, positive reinforcement. The idea is to respond eagerly to anything they say or do.
Anything. Acknowledge it, praise their response, do whatever you can to boost their confidence. Even if it's just a simple nod or a muttered agreement, the leader should seize on it.
And you can validate it by repeating it for the group. That's a key point that Sarah just made. You're signaling to everyone that this person's input has value.
The third strategy is all about the leader's nonverbal communication. Body language.
So important.
The leader needs to use consistent eye contact, lean toward the group, have an open posture. All of these things communicate warmth and interest and invitation. Your body language has to create a sort of relational shield that makes the onlooker feel safe before they even think about speaking.
And if the leader seems distracted or, aloof, the onlooker is just going to retreat instantly.
Building on that nonverbal vigilance is strategy 4. You have to be alert for any attempt they make to enter the discussion.
What does that look like?
Well, the onlooker often makes these tiny, tentative movements. A half-raised hand, a shift in their seat, maybe a quiet cough, right before their courage fails them.
And the leader has to be watching for these microgestures.
Yes, and quickly intercept them with a gentle invitation. Did you have a thought there, John? It requires a high level of focus from the leader. You're anticipating their contribution rather than demanding it.
Okay, strategy 5 addresses the possibility of boredom or just disinterest. If the onlooker is silent because they're just not engaged, the leader has to figure out what their interests are.
You have to do a little reconnaissance. Find out their background, their hobbies, their specific areas of experience. Then you can ask for specific comments related to that expertise.
The source has a brilliant template for this, something like, Vera, you have had some experience with this kind of situation. Would you tell us what you found?
It's perfect because it turns a generic group discussion into a targeted request for their personal expertise. It grants them immediate authority and relevance.
A different kind of tactic is strategy 6, using inclusive techniques. For example, getting all the members to write out their answers to a question first, and then have everyone read what they wrote.
This levels the playing field completely. Since the answer is already formulated and written down, that anxiety of speaking spontaneously is gone.
The onlooker is sort of forced to contribute, but on terms that bypass their reluctance. It ensures everyone participates.
And finally, for someone who is just deeply nervous, strategy 7 suggests using smaller subgroups.
Breaking the main group into pairs or huddles of 3.
Right. The nervousness of addressing a whole room of 10 or 12 people is so much less when you're just talking to 1 or 2 peers. The leader can then gather the findings from those subgroups, making sure the onlooker's input surfaces, even if it's indirectly.
It's a very systematic, gentle approach. It's designed for long-term success, not a quick fix.
Okay, now let's swing to the exact opposite extreme. The monopolizer. The excessive talker.
The person who acts like they're alone in the room, they seem to just love the sound of their own voice. And they consume all the group's time and stifle everyone else's input, especially the onlookers.
The source material is wise here in trying to identify the root of the behavior. Often, this kind of dominance is a mask for their own insecurity.
How so?
They might equate silence with failure, or they feel this compulsion to prove their worth by constantly speaking. Or, on the other hand, they might just be a born rambler who has no awareness of conversational flow and boundaries.
Either way, the behavior needs firm but gentle limitation.
And the strategies for that require the leader to be assertive and tactical. First, you have to reiterate the agreed-upon ground rules about shared participation.
So you frame the intervention not as, hey, you're talking too much, but as, hey, we all agreed to help each other join the discussion.
Exactly. It depersonalizes the restriction. It's about upholding the group's collective agreement.
Then there's a physical strategy. Sit yourself near them.
The seating arrangement matters a lot. If the leader sits right next to the monopolizer, it reduces the amount of direct eye contact between them. And that eye contact is often the silent invitation that triggers their next long discourse.
If they don't catch your eye, they feel less encouraged to dominate the next 20 minutes. That's subtle.
Strategy 3 is about preemptive intervention through how you ask questions. When you pose a question, give specific participation instructions.
For example, you could say, for this next question, I want to hear from those who haven't shared their opinion yet.
Right. It provides a public but still graceful boundary for the monopolizer. It instructs them, without accusing them, that this turn isn't for them.
But what happens when they launch into a monologue anyway? That's when the leader needs some interruption techniques. The source suggests using respectful interruption mid-speech.
And that's tough. It's hard for a lot of leaders who don't like confrontation.
So what does that sound like?
The examples are great. Something like, you have obviously thought through this issue. Let's see what others think now. Or, we have heard your ideas on this topic, Joe. Let's move on to discuss the second point.
Wait, respectful interruption mid-speech. Doesn't that risk alienating them, making them feel shut down? How does a leader maintain a pastoral relationship while tactically cutting them off?
That's the challenge, and it all goes back to the framing. You have to validate their input before you redirect.
Okay.
Saying, you have obviously thought through this issue validates their intelligence and their preparation. You're separating the person from the pattern of behavior.
So the key is to interrupt gently but firmly, and then immediately pivot to the next speaker or the next point.
Yes, you give them no room to restart. If they feel like they were heard and their contribution was acknowledged, they're less likely to see the redirection as a personal rejection.
The next strategy, strategy 5, deals with the speaker who seems to only pause for breath. When they finally take that necessary pause, the leader has to jump in immediately, thank them, acknowledge their last point, and move on.
You can't wait for them to inhale and launch into the next chapter of their narrative. The timing is vital. The leader has to seize that brief moment of silence.
And finally, what's the long-term solution?
The private conversation. The leader should meet with them one-on-one. You address the pattern gently, and then you suggest they could adopt a new constructive role.
So instead of dominating the conversation,
You suggest they contribute by drawing others into the discussion. You frame it as a higher level of contribution, using their enthusiasm and their ability to articulate to minister to the quieter members of the group. This satisfies their need to contribute, but it channels their energy constructively.
Okay, so if we've addressed the extremes of participation, the next set of destructive roles are the ones that mostly derail the group's focus or inject some kind of disruptive tension. Let's start with the flight risk.
That would be the sidetracker. This is the person who just seems incapable of staying tethered to the topic. They bring what the source calls a bag full of red herrings.
They're constantly dragging the group into these tangents that might be fascinating but are totally irrelevant.
And this is the leader's dilemma, which the source wisely points out. Sometimes the tangent is, tragically, more interesting or more emotionally engaging than the curriculum you've planned.
Yes. That makes the job of redirecting so much harder. You're not just fighting the sidetracker, you're fighting the natural pull of the entire room toward the more exciting story.
So the strategies for redirection have to be smart. They start with passive management. The leader doesn't have to respond to every single comment.
So if a sidetrack comment is minor and clearly irrelevant, you can just let it pass without acknowledging it.
Exactly. Don't give it the oxygen of a response. Let the silence that follows communicate that the tangent has been noted, but not endorsed.
But if ignoring it doesn't work, strategy 2 is more proactive. Ask a new question that is specifically designed to divert the discussion back to the original topic.
Right. You don't engage the tangent directly. You just bypass it by injecting renewed energy into the core agenda. So if the tangent was about hobbies, you don't say, that's off topic.
You say something like, let's go back to our text. How does Paul's argument in verse 6 change how we think about our daily work?
Strategy 3 gives you a way to acknowledge the contribution while still maintaining control. If the tangent is genuinely interesting, you can acknowledge it and suggest picking it up later.
Let's talk about that over supper or after the meeting is over.
This validates the person's input. It shows you heard them, but it firmly asserts that the current agenda comes first.
But the source warns us there is an exception. The leader has to be discerning.
Yes, some apparent sidetracks are worth pursuing. If they unexpectedly bring up a critical pastoral topic, or if they genuinely lead toward the goals of the discussion, even if it's not on the written outline. A wise leader knows the difference between a distraction and a real spiritual need that's just surfaced.
And if the sidetracker pattern is chronic and it's constantly disrupting the group's purpose?
Then private feedback is needed. You suggest to them that they can view it as a way to serve the group by helping everyone else maintain focus. You're not criticizing their ideas, you're criticizing the pattern of distraction they create.
Okay, moving to another source of lighter disruption, we have the clown.
Right. And we already established that the constructive humorist is an asset. They relieve tension.
But the clown becomes a destructive role when the humor is excessive or inappropriate or unkind, or when the behavior just attracts too much attention to the individual, distracting the group from its work.
They're using humor as a shield or a spotlight, not as a relational lubricant.
And the strategy provided for this is deceptively simple and powerful.
Don't always laugh.
That's it.
That's it. It's pure behavioral conditioning. If the disruptive, distracting behavior is consistently rewarded with the attention and validation of everyone laughing, it will be repeated. The leader has to intentionally withhold that reinforcement.
So by staying sober and focused on the material, when the clown tries to derail things with an inappropriate joke, the leader removes the reward, and that gradually extinguishes the unwanted behavior.
Next up is the expert. This is the group member who appears to be exceptionally knowledgeable on, well, one or all subjects.
They're the ones citing sources, quoting Greek, or showing how familiar they are with all the commentators.
And the key diagnostic question for the leader here is this genuine knowledge that can actually help the group? Or is it just their perception of their own knowledge? Is it a form of intellectual monopolizing?
Right. A self-proclaimed expert who is consistently wrong, or who uses their supposed knowledge to intimidate other people, is disastrous for the group's morale and its theological clarity.
So the strategies are about leveraging this person's skills while at the same time testing their actual knowledge. Strategy 1. Assign them a suitable task.
Like what?
Ask them to prepare and give a short 5-minute talk or a summary on a specific topic the group is about to cover. If they can articulate the concept clearly, accurately, and charitably, then they're validated. They become a valuable asset the group can trust.
And if they can't deliver a coherent talk,
then the group naturally learns to sort of modulate how much weight they give to their future contributions, and the leader doesn't have to have a big confrontation.
strategy 2 is to channel their desire for authority into a constructive partnership. You make them an ally.
How do you do that?
You ask them to give you specific, private feedback on how the group is functioning, how the discussion flowed, if the material is presented clearly, or if they noticed that certain members seemed disengaged.
So this appeals to their desire to be seen as knowledgeable and useful. It channels their critical energy into helping the process, rather than just using it to dominate the content.
Exactly. And finally, in this section, we have to confront the fighter.
The person who is argumentative, sometimes aggressive, and just seems bent on challenging every single point or statement that's made.
Now, we have to acknowledge their positive side. In a reformed context especially, they often stir up debate because they are genuinely dissatisfied with theological cliches or easy answers.
They push for real fidelity to the text. They demand rigorous debate, and in theory, that's a good thing. They keep the group sharp.
But the downside is huge. They intimidate other people, which immediately shuts down participation from the less secure members. Their aggression can poison the whole relational atmosphere.
So the strategies are all about containment. You want to maintain the rigor of the debate without sacrificing the harmony of the group.
Okay, this brings us to a strategy that seems a bit controversial. Strategy 1 suggests the leader should win some arguments to demonstrate the fighter's fallibility.
I know. That sounds counterintuitive to relational leadership.
Yeah.
But here's the justification. If the fighter uses aggression and certainty to push ideas that are incorrect or poorly reasoned, and they're never shown to be incorrect,
Then their aggressive authority just grows.
it does. So the leader, as a steward of the truth, must occasionally demonstrate, charitably but firmly, that the fighter is indeed fallible. This reduces the intimidating authority they have over the rest of the group.
So this is done to protect the group's intellectual safety, not for the leader's personal victory.
That distinction is key. It's about truth-telling, not about ego. And strategy 2 is the flip side of that. Avoid being drawn into a heated circular debate.
Never let the fighter hijack the whole agenda.
Right. You win the point tactically, you demonstrate the truth, and you immediately transition back to the main topic.
Yeah.
You have to protect the focus of the group from becoming a dueling ground between you and the fighter.
And strategy 3 is to move the conflict to a private setting.
Yes. You privately point out the negative effect their aggression is having on the rest of the group. And you focus on the observable result of their behavior, the intimidation, the silence, the relational fear, rather than just labeling them as an angry person. It gives them a clear, objective metric for self-correction.
All right, we move now to the most localized but equally disruptive source of group malfunction, the simultaneous conversation.
This is the chatterer. The description in the source is so clear. They conduct little conversations with their neighbor. It might be about the topic or, more often, about unrelated things, and it distracts everyone.
They could be whispering, passing notes, making small comments, but their mouths are just open too often. It's this constant low-level fragmentation of the group's attention and focus.
The chatterer often seems to operate under the illusion that their conversation is private or that no one notices. Or maybe they just think their side discussion is somehow exempt from the rules of mutual respect.
But in reality, it just signals disrespect to whoever is speaking, and it destroys the flow of ideas for everyone sitting around them.
The strategies for quiet correction here are very gentle. They prioritize nonverbal communication and social pressure over some kind of public confrontation.
So, strategy 1. The leader should just pause and let everyone listen.
Exactly. The leader stops speaking. This draws instant attention to the silence that the chatter is breaking. It's a subtle but really powerful way of highlighting the disruptive behavior without shaming them or calling them out by name.
The moment the whole group shifts its attention from the leader to the source of the noise, the intense social pressure of that collective gaze usually forces the chatterers into silence immediately.
It's a powerful, non-confrontational corrective tool.
And strategy 2 involves directly inviting them to join the main discussion. You're giving them a choice: productive contribution or total silence.
Right. You draw them into the main discussion by genuinely asking their opinion. And you have to make sure you avoid any hint of sarcasm.
You're giving them a polite public invitation. We would all be interested in your comments, Bob. What are you and your neighbor discussing?
You're inviting them to join the constructive dialogue rather than just punishing them for the disruptive one. You elevate their conversation to the whole group, which almost never results in them choosing to continue the side chat.
We have dissected, 23 strategies across 7 different destructive roles, and we've analyzed 9 constructive roles. That is a pretty comprehensive framework for small group leadership.
It is. So let's try to consolidate the broad, overarching philosophy that should govern how a leader approaches all this.
Right. The source material gives 3 general steps for leaders, steps that demand proactive reflection instead of just reactive, frustrated intervention. These steps move group leadership from guesswork to wisdom.
Okay, step 1. The leader has to work out the positive as well as the negative effects of the roles people adopt.
We saw this, right? The fighter can bring rigor. The clown can bring necessary levity. A good leader doesn't just see a problem that needs to be eliminated.
They see the potential asset that needs redirection and careful channeling. The goal isn't to silence the person, but to harness their energy for the group's shared mission.
Step 2. Work out why certain people adopt the roles they do. What's the root motivation?
Is the monopolizer speaking out of insecurity? Is the onlooker silent because they're genuinely shy? Or are they just bored? Is the fighter fueled by a zeal for truth or a personal need for control?
And understanding that motivation dictates the pastoral approach you take. Insecurity requires affirmation and gentle invitation. Self-absorption needs boundaries and firm redirection.
And step 3 is crucial for deciding how intense your strategy needs to be. You have to ask, is this behavior a one-off performance, or is it a set, established pattern?
A single disruptive comment could just be explained by someone having a difficult day. But a set pattern, that sophisticated game developed over years, that requires the long-term, specific, planned strategies we've been talking about.
You don't deploy the full Monopolizer private conversation strategy for just one instance of someone overspeaking.
So recognizing these patterns allows leaders to act proactively and with wisdom. It moves you beyond just an emotional reaction toward intentional, thoughtful group administration.
It's about shepherding souls and managing group assets. All these practical strategies are just ways of making sure the leader fulfills their stewardship role, loving the individuals well by ensuring the entire group can contribute to growth in grace and truth.
This whole framework really elevates group leadership. It acknowledges that human behavior is complex, even inside a closed, intimate setting like a small group. It moves the conversation from just focusing on the symptoms, the disruption, to addressing the underlying cause, which is the pattern of relationship.
And that framework is universally applicable, whether you're leading a corporate team meeting, a volunteer council, or a discipleship group. Recognizing the onlooker, the fighter, or the focuser allows you to be wise, proactive, and purposeful in guiding the group toward its goals.
All right, it's time for the final thought, something for you to mull over as you reflect on these patterns. We spent a lot of time detailing how to manage the destructive roles, but we started with those 9 highly constructive roles: the peacemaker, the encourager, the summarizer, and so on.
So the challenge for personal reflection is this. Which of those constructive roles do you, the listener, most often adopt yourself?
And here's the provocative twist. How might that preferred positive role, if you use it without temperance, become its own subtle source of disruption or distraction for your group? So, if you are always the devil's advocate, do you inadvertently stifle genuine emotional sharing? If you are always the summarizer, do you prevent other people from developing the necessary discipline of synthesizing information for themselves?
Even positive patterns require temperance and wisdom in how they're applied. Self-awareness of your own game is the first step toward wise leadership.
Thank you for providing the source material that led to this incredibly detailed deep dive into small group dynamics. We trust these strategic insights will help you guide your groups toward mutual edification.
Until next time.